Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Backstage Pass. This is your host, Lee Zimmerman, with my producer, co-host, and resident technical genius, I added that, Billy Hubbard.
I thought I wrote that.
Yeah, oh, you did, yeah. And today we're so excited to have, I think I can safely say, a real legend joining us, Noel Paul Stookey. Yeah. One of the seminal founding members of the great band, the great trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And Noel is still making wonderful music. And Noel, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be in such pleasant Nashvilleian company.
Oh, you flatter us, sir.
I recall really fondly all the visits I made in the context of the trio, and then later coming down with the Body Works band. Yeah, Tennessee's always been a very comfortable. I don't know. It's something about the music that runs through the hills, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now we're located in East Tennessee. We're not Nashville. People always say you say Tennessee and people assume it's Nashville. Yeah. But we are on the eastern side of the state near the Smoky Mountains.
Where the good music's at.
It's great music here as well. Great music here as well. So first of all, let's clear this up. It was Peter, Paul, and Mary, but your name is Noel Stookey. So can we just clear that up? So.
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to commend you on your research, and then
thank you, sir.
Take you in a time capsule back to Greenwich Village. Peter, Mary, and I had just finished maybe a demo of about 4 or 5 tunes to sing for Albert Grossman, who was the manager, kind of the brains behind bringing the trio together.
Right, and Bob Dylan's manager at the time as well. Yeah.
No, not at the time.
Oh, later on.
Manager, and he became the band's manager, and Odetta's manager, and you name it. But at the time, we finished the 4 or 5 tunes, and he and his Albert and John Court, his partner, said, if nothing happens, you guys are going to happen. And we looked at each other and smiled, and he said, now, about the name. And Mary said, well, we've been talking about the Willows because we're tall and lanky. And, and Albert said, well, if Noel would change his name to Paul, we could call the group Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I don't know if you guys know the old folk tune. It says, I was born about 10,000 years ago. There's nothing in this world that I don't know. Oh, yeah. I saw Peter, Paul, and Moses playing Ring Around the Roses, and I'll whoop the guy that says it. Isn't so?
Okay,
so
all right.
The Peter, Paul, and M was already there. We just had to fill in the airy.
I think Peter, Noel, and Mary would have sounded just fine. Right? I guess you were going for the alliteration as well. Yeah.
Well, we could have gone the other way. It could have been neater, Noel and Mary.
Yeah, Peter, Noel, and Mary. Yeah. Well, okay. Somehow.
Yeah, but it's already. I only had, and I said I'm not going to take it on as a first name, but I'll take it on as a middle name with no idea that it was going to take me on and change my life so much.
I don't think anybody could change the name. I mean, it's so seared in my generation's brain. I would never be able to go any other way. Now that doesn't sound right any other way.
Yeah, well, no, I guess not. But if we had started out from the beginning, But it was, so Paul was totally made up. That was not your name. That was not your middle name or anything else then.
No, it was not.
All right. Noel Paul Stookey, though, is your professional name now, and graces the cover of your new album, Just Causes, which it's a beautiful record. And you and I have spoken before, Noel, and you mentioned that these songs are older songs, that you wrote them a while ago and only now assembled them. Is that the case?
Well, I was kind of, I don't know if you've noticed watching the Peter, Paul, and Mary career, but I was kind of a Johnny-come-lately to songs of social conscience. I mean, I was a young rhythm and blues wannabe in Michigan, and then I moved to New York, and then I discovered folk music, and then folk music had such an impact on the way that I began to perceive what music could do. And I think, it affected all of us, in those early days of radio when it was nothing but, Perry Como and Bing Crosby and romantic love songs. I mean, along comes a song like Blowing in the Wind and you go, oh, I see. Music can talk about more than just boy-girl relationships. So looking back at a catalog for this most recent release of mine, I realized that I wrote sporadically, but I wrote pretty regularly about some subject or some concern that had come up in my life, and assembled over 50 years. It made, as you can count, 15 tracks on this new album.
Yeah.
It was really the Paul Newman connection, though, that put me over the edge,
with all the proceeds going to charity. Yeah.
Exactly. And I thought, geez, I could do that. I mean, these songs already been recorded, they're already been on albums that have done well by me. And so I assigned each one of the tracks to its thematic partner, everything from the indigenous people on a track called Tom Quick, to Massachusetts Power and Light. I just, my own daughter's foundation, Music to Life, who supports young singer-songwriters who want to make difference in their communities. It was a gas. And then I contacted each one of these folks and said, that I wanted to include them. And some of them have even posted the album on their websites because it's, in a sense, kind of an incentive to their donors, a reminder to their donors that there's an emotional quantity to the organization that they want to support.
And this is something that you started with your first solo album when you wrote your wonderful song, Wedding Song. The proceeds from that song went to charitable cause as well, right? I mean, that sort of started it off. Yeah.
Well, I started it all in a more cascading way than you probably realize, because I got to when you put a song on a record, you have to tell the record company who the author is and who the publishing company is. Well, the Wedding Song was an answer to a prayer. And I don't mean kind of a muse kind of thing, fill me with inspiration that I might write a song to glorify you. I'm sure that those prayers are, equally well meant, but this was a specific prayer in answer to Peter's, my partner Peter's, request that I bless his wedding with a song. And as I've said in concert, it felt like the guy in the Woody Allen film who hands the bank teller a note that said, I don't have a gun, but I know where I could get one.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't authorized to dispense blessings, but I nonetheless prayed, said, how would you, capital Y, manifest yourself at Peter's wedding? So when it came time to assign a writer or a publisher, there was no way I was going to put my name on it. And so I made it, I made all the monies go to Public Domain Foundation. And as you said, they supported a lot of other charities. And it's a little like love, once you start giving it away, you start getting it back, and you realize that you're part of a bigger chain than you had originally conceived.
Well, that song is absolutely a standard and one of the most beautiful songs, and I guess we would all lose count if we counted the number of weddings where that song was part of the soundtrack.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it even got some television. I think it was on a couple of sitcoms as well.
Yeah. There's one thing I remember reading, or maybe it was somewhere I saw you mention quite a while back, and it was because stuck with me, and it was because as a songwriter or as an artist, lots of artists are great at putting their message out in a song, but when they, as far as trying to get it, just get on stage and as a speaker, they're not really great speakers often. So I can't remember. I think you were the one that you had mentioned that somewhere along the way about even how Dylan was not a good speaker, and the folk music of the day would be, you could put out a message in a song that was very effective, where artists couldn't get up there and just maybe big mumble mouth like me.
Or like me,
well,
yeah.
Honestly, don't you agree that people don't like to be lectured to?
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line. There are some artists, and we don't have to name names, but there are some artists that get up on stage and pontificate one way or the other, all over the spectrum.
Yeah.
And after a while, people will say, well, that's great, I agree. Or they might say, I didn't come here to be lectured to. So it's a fine line. Yeah.
I also agree, and I don't know if you've noticed from the songs that are on the Just Causes album, but I noticed that what I have a tendency to do is to write a 2.5 to 4.5 minute story song that invites the listener to draw their own conclusion. And I think when we own something that we figured out, when we figure out the moral or the trajectory of a song because of its emotional content, I really think when we own it, then it's ours, and it becomes part of our life, and that's the way we live our life from there on out.
Yeah, I think you're right, and of course, Peter, Paul, and Mary were one of the seminal forces in the whole folk music, if you want to call it a revolution or a transition into a powerful social voice. You just played such an important role. And even as I'm speaking with you, Noel, I got to admit, I'm a little awestruck because of the iconic stature that you have, and yet you're still a very down-to-earth guy. It's pretty remarkable,
Think of the times that folk music came to pop radio. I mean, it wasn't single-handed or tri-handed that this music arrived. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and the fact that the music lent itself so well to the life that was going on around us. I mean, 60s were in turmoil, the civil rights. 60s were turmoil in terms of the war in Vietnam. And then along comes 70s, awareness of environmental rights. The 80s, 90s, we're talking about and silk, racism continues, and the misogyny and the disrespect for one another. So the fact that folk music opens the door to be able to talk about these things or to share views or concerns in such an emotional way, really renders the person who does it kind of just a vehicle. You can't really take credit for it so much as just be thankful for being able to move the world along a little closer to where goodness lies.
Well, I think you can take credit for some very significant things that you did with your music. For example, you gave voice to the young Bob Dylan, to John Denver. You exposed these wonderful songwriters before much of the world had heard them. And that in itself is a remarkable achievement, I think.
I'm kind of curious to get your opinion, as a matter of fact, now that I look at that fact, which demonstrably really is because radio was what it was in the 60s, 70s, and even part of the 80s. But how do you think those voices now, those new voices are going to get heard in this age that we live in where everything is streaming or it's videoed or...
Well, you're asking a guy here who is not a big fan of streaming, who is not a big fan of the so-called new commercial sound and the dancers and the gimmicks and all of that stuff. And I really lament the fact that the music that was once so meaningful and insightful and so indelible is sort of tossed to the side. I mean, that's my opinion. You know, streaming, the lack of physicality with records. I don't know.
I think it'll come back. Furniture does it, so why not music?
Furniture does. Well, sure. In my case, fashion. I still have clothes in my closet from 40 years ago. I don't throw them out, you know. But
then you're going to come back into fashion pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, my own personal history, I think Peter, Paul, and Mary was the very first concert that I ever saw. It was either Peter, Paul, and Mary or Julius LaRosa in Miami Beach. I don't know. A big divide there. But
I remember Julius LaRosa. My father, sure, because my father's secretary, he worked for the Gaines Rubber Company, and Joyce D. Young, who went on to be a singer on the Fred Waring show, fell in love with Julius LaRosa. I think they had a date or two, and so it's a small world. I know Julius LaRosa is.
Didn't we all sort of fall in love with Julius LaRosa?
Well, I don't want to be gender specific here, but no, I don't.
Well, in a musical sense, of course, no. Whatever. That's.
Hey, what do you suppose what do you suppose the average age of your listener is? Because are they going to know Arthur Godfrey? Are they going to know Julius?
Probably not. We're going to have to put a little postscript on this, I think. Julius LaRosa, definitely a little bit of an obscurity here. But to make it serious for a moment here, the fact is, if some people are not aware of the history, particularly as it applies to Peter, Paul, and Mary and some of the other great artists that were around in the 60s, then they ought to go and do their research and they ought to find the foundation, because it's so important. Music does not exist in a void. There's a history to it. There are roots and traditions. And I think that's something that Peter, Paul, and Mary were very much a part of. And that legacy continues today, not only as far as the trio is concerned, but with your music, because you're carrying on the tradition. So
yeah, and also people like Tom Chapin, who carries Pete Seeger's tradition, keeping the Hudson River clean, doing the sloop revival. And, you guys got to admit, this pandemic has made it really difficult for any kind of live music.
Oh, yeah,
So we're resorted to little Zoom windows, where we kind of have an intimate moment. I mean, there's some advantage to it, but yeah, we all miss the tactile breathing, the in and out of an actual performance. And I'm on your side. I mean, I really enjoy small venues, anywhere from maybe maximum, 120, 200 people, because there's a kind of a rapport and an instant understanding of, a raised eyebrow, much less a mistake on the guitar.
Right.
And,
right.
And you don't dodge the issue. You say, well, that was a beauty, wasn't it?
We should play a song from the new album. Would you like to tell us a good track here that we should sample, so to speak?
I think that there was a certain wisdom in leading off. I mean, there's two or three tracks that are pretty important.
All right.
The Revolution, of course, but I think the first track's probably, In These Times, which is just me on an acoustic guitar,
right.
But I think it tells the story of the album pretty much.
All right, let's play a little bit of that.
Let's check it out.
Here we go.
There's a warning in the wind that comes wailing through the trees. A depression in the shoreline left by the pounding seas. There is a lesson in the drought that brings a country to its knees in these times. We are dancing with disaster when we live beyond our needs and pretend our hungry souls are not related to our greed. Life's a journey, but it's not about the speed in these times. In these times, we must be mindful of the gift. In these times, use our hands and hearts to lift the fallen spirit in this land, planting flowers in the sand, reaching out a helping hand. In these times.
What a beautiful song. And you're right, it really does encapsulate the feeling of the album and the songs that follow, and just a voice and a guitar. That's really all you need, right?
It sounds great. Their fancy headphones here too, man.
And our fancy headphones, yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest question facing us as citizens of this world is, what can I do about it? You know, what as a single person, I can send some money in to support this cause or that cause, but what can I do individually? And that's why I was bookending the album with a song called Revolution. Now, before you play Revolution,
All right.
I want you to know, and I want your constituents to know, that if they log on to www.revolution1x1, that's the number 1, and then an X, and then a 1. So revolution1x1.org, O-R-G. They can join in a video.
A video?
A video that of a bunch of smiling people who are trying to make the world just a little happier. And that's what the lyric of Revolution is all about. Because if we're going to win this revolution, we're going to have to do it one by one, insofar as the way we treat each other with respect and kindness is the answer. And it's not going to be organized from up top, It's going to be, we all got to be in on the action.
Now, how do you get on the video? By going to that website?
Well, it says, this is the coolest thing. I got a friend here in Blue Hill, Maine. I live on the coast of Maine, kind of in a rural community.
Mm-hmm.
But, with computers, it doesn't really matter so much where you live. And I got a friend who worked out this photo booth with a selfie. So you log on, you hear the song, and underneath it says, get a button. And you go, what? Get a free button. So you scoop on down to the bottom of the page, and it says, go to the photo booth, turn on, and then it says, may we use your camera? You say yes. It's usually connected to your computer, and it says, okay, now grab the button with the mouse and slide it over and put it on your chest someplace. And then click take a picture, and then that picture automatically goes into a file of pictures that joins the other pictures that are on a video that you just watched. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, you know what? No, we gotta give you some applause for that, because
it's very unique. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way beyond my technical prowess, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah. Wow.
All you got to do is follow the steps.
Easier said than done in my case.
Do we have to take a picture of our face? I mean, we may not. Do we?
Well, yeah, no, we'll send them our cartoon characters.
Oh yeah.
We have a character faces that we'll use.
I'm making a note.
He's making. All right, Billy knows how to do all of that. I have to ask. Are you a nostalgic kind of guy? When I interviewed you for whatever publication it was recently, I asked you the same question. But with your history and the events that you've been a part of and the people that you've met, do you sometimes just look at it and go, wow, in the history books, is that me? Wow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I come across pictures of myself with presidents, and I go, "You gotta be kidding!
Wow.
Really?" Yeah. And the nicest story I remember though was the one with Jack Kennedy. We sang to celebrate his second year of inauguration, and the vice president Lyndon Johnson invited everybody for a post-concert party. So Peter and Mary and I are thrown around on the back of this 60-mile-an-hour limousine speeding through the streets of Washington, D.C. with a police escort. And we get to the party, and Gene Kelly is there, you know. Remember Gene Kelly?
Yes, you younger folks. Great dancer. We know Gene Kelly, sure.
So he gets Jack up to tap dance with him, right? For My Irish Eyes Are Smiling. And Kennedy, as personable as he was, came around to each of the performers, because we all did what we had done before at the Armory. Now we were doing it in Lyndon's living room. And he comes over and he says to Peter and me, he says, I noticed that people were applauding and singing along with the song. How did they know that song? And so Peter's kind of overwhelmed, you know, a little tongue-tied, but nonetheless, he tries to explain the concept of a 7-inch, 45 RPM record.
Oh my God!
And he's saying, "Well, it came out as a single, sir." And he shakes his hand like the outs on the perimeter. And President Kennedy reaches over and touches his arm. He says, okay. He says, I know that. He says, I just don't get the chance to listen to the radio driving to work anymore.
Yeah, that's funny. It
is those kind of moments that really stay in my mind and, you know, convince me of how fortunate I was to have grown up in that era. That was a very hopeful era.
It seems to be a common denominator of people that guess we have, you know, that it's just, you know, you just be in the right place at the right time. Yet, of course, you got to have the talent and the goods to carry on. But that's always fascinating, just where of all the places in the world you could be born or you could end up at, you know.
Yeah.
But you were also there at a milestone in musical history at the Newport Folk Festival when Bob Dylan went electric. And from what I understand, you had sort of a forewarning that might have, and didn't you have some sort of discussion with Mr. Dylan about, you know, whether or not that was prudent or something?
No, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done that anyway, even if I had such a strong opinion. He came out, you know, one thing that most people don't know is, I mean, of course, the evening show was the great unveiling, but there was also an afternoon songwriter show that not too many people talk about. First of all, let's set the stage. I mean, we're talking Newport 1965, and there are a lot of blues singers. I mean, there's folks from, you know, Nashville, there's folks from New Orleans, there's folks from Memphis, and they're bringing electric guitars. You know, they're playing the blues. So the sound of an electric guitar was not that unusual. And on the afternoon performance, Dylan surprised everybody by showing up at the songwriters thing. We know he's going to be on in the evening. He's kind of a headliner in the evening, but he comes on with the Paul Butterfield Band. Well, Paul Butterfield is a blues band out of Chicago.
Right.
So he does Maggie's Farm. And at the end of Maggie's Farm, he gets applause. I mean, because it's a perfect kind of song for it anyway. And then I think he did a short piece of one other tune, and then he left the stage because that was all he had worked out with the Butterfield Band. So there was some booze. There was some.
That was the booze. All right, the booze was for that. The electricity.
Yeah, Peter put an acoustic guitar in his hands. You get back out there, Bobby. They want more music than that. Now that was a different kind of, you know, a different framework entirely from the evening. in the evening, I think maybe the word had gotten out that he was playing with the Butterfield Blues Band and that he had gone electric. And then, so by the time he hit the stage in the evening, the purists were up in arms, and they just wanted to hear the acoustic. And I think that they felt that the impact of the lyric would become subservient to the music. Certainly, I think that's how Seeger felt. And he kept, because his major concern was, geez, turn it down, turn the music down. Let's hear the lyric.
Oh, man.
And you know, funny you should mention that, because one of the tracks on the Just Causes album is Not That Kind of Music. And it says, you know, it's more about the message and less about the style. And it's kind of an homage to Pete. If you get a chance to play that, you'll think.
Yeah, well, let's play some of that right now. Let's do that.
Yeah, all right.
Here we go. Here we go.
It's not that kind of music, he said with a smile. It's more about the message and less about the style. Then he played a chord and each of us would try to learn a part. He brought us all together singing music from the heart. It was a lesson in harmony and we'd make that joyful sound. It was a song about spirits reaching for that higher ground. Sometimes he'd play the banjo, songs from other lands. Sometimes it was a 12-string or just the sound of clapping hands. But there always was this moment kind of hard.
It's hard to quit playing that.
Yeah, but that seems like the ideal ode to the singer-songwriter, musician, the traveling troubadour, so to speak. With, you know, right? I mean, it's the versatility and making the music count and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I do think we're up for another round of that. I mean, I think that people after the pandemic are not going to want the big crowd somewhere. They're going to want to go to the station and hear some quiet.
You hear that,
thought.
Billy?
Yeah.
You better start booking more shows there, buddy.
Yeah, and
Billy's shows sell out as soon as they
usually
go.
sell out in a few hours because that's what we try to get, you know, just even the acoustics in there. If you just do an acoustic guitars, the 120-year-old raw wood building is just incredible.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I bet.
So you, again, as you were saying earlier, you lived part of the time in Nashville and then part of the time in Maine. I'm curious, in Nashville in particular, have you been drawn into that Nashville musical scene? Do you hang out with other musicians? Are you really immersed in that Nashville setup there?
No, man. I haven't been. No, and I haven't been to Nashville for at least over 10 years.
I thought you went back and forth. Maybe I'm confused. Yeah.
Well, you know, Peter and Barry and I had a few concerts there, and I enjoyed it. I went in.
You live part of the time in California, don't you? That's what I'm.
That's
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's at my own expense. Yeah. So you live part of the time on the East Coast and part of the time on the West Coast.
That's right. Yeah, about 7 and 5 actually.
Oh, okay.
7 because I'm right on the coast here in Maine. It's beautiful.
Oh, I bet. I
bet. California's a little hot to handle right now.
Yeah. Good to be in Maine at this point in time. It really is.
I do have to ask one thing before I forget. Okay, when I was a kid, I think I was probably at the age that I first heard I'm in love with a big blue frog. I was probably 12 or so. You know what? I can write my own songs, and I can't remember my own lyrics, but I can still remember the lyrics to that song. So, and I was trying to remember the way he spelled. Actually, I was going to ask you if you had frog tattooed on your chest.
P-H-R-O-T.
Yeah. What does that mean? Anything particularly, or is that just?
No, just that PH is sometimes pronounced F.
Oh, okay.
So,
I thought it was something. I just had this theory my whole life. Okay, you just blew it.
But that's the thing about Peter, Paul, and Mary, because you had songs that were socially conscious, that spoke to a generation, that spoke to the world. But you also had wonderful, beautiful songs like Puff the Magic Dragon, which I got to admit, I find that's a very emotional song. That's just not a kid's song. No, that's a lovely song, and it gets me every time. It really gets me every time. Or Leaving on a Jet Plane by the late, great John Denver.
Quite a legacy.
I think the curious thing about folk music, at least the way we were taught or mentored, is that the whole family is represented. It's not just the adolescent kids with the pimples that are making out in the back seat of the Buick. It's the 6-year-old who still thinks that there might be such a thing as fairy godmothers who fly through the clouds.
Yeah.
It's the 35-year-old, who's been disillusioned by his experiences, love, and he's looking for the reality of life. It's the 60, 70-year-old grandparents, who are still amused by the playing of their grandchildren. Folk music is so broad in its appeal, and we always, I can't remember an album we recorded that didn't have a children's song on it. If it was raining, it's pouring, or like you said, Big Blue Frog.
Oh yeah.
Because and then we even put out an album towards the end of our 60s career called Peter, Paul, and Mommy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And someone wrote a book. Didn't someone write something?
Yeah. They turned it into a book, and I think it's a PBS special too.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Noel, again, I keep saying this over and over, but you've been a part of so many seminal and significant events, not only in musical history, just in history. And I'm wondering if there's one event that you were a part of, one thing that stands out above all, that still resonates with you over everything else.
You have to look through the lens of, I have to look through the lens of the impact that it had on the world around me as well as on myself. And if I do that, then the circumstances point pretty naturally to the March on Washington in 1963. But if, because that's where Dr. King spoke, that's right, where 200,000 people realized that they were a family. But, for personal impact, I can go to El Salvador in the 80s and remember being in the congregation of a church when a priest held up a white rose and said, I'm going to give this to Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary to take back to America, and ask him not to spill the blood of El Salvadorans on it.
Wow. Wow, it's kind of heavy duty.
Kind of heavy duty.
Yeah.
And I can remember tumbling into the back seat of a Rolls Royce coming out of a club celebrating Peter, Paul, and Mary's performance at the Olympia Theater in Paris to find Peter O'Toole sitting in the front seat to go off to a party somewhere. And he said, in his usual cavalier fashion, "Kiss me." And I looked at him. I said, "What?" I said, "I don't, not until that's right. I wanted to be hip. So I said, well, not until I know you better." Right?
They're perfect. Perfect.
And he said in the deadest monotone, "Know me better."
Wow.
So I kissed him.
Again, how many people can say they kissed Peter O'Toole in a limousine? I mean, it's just.
Well, there are probably a few women that we could say.
Well, yeah, but we'll bend the rules, sir, because again, this was a moment in time.
Well, how old are you guys? You're in your 60s?
Yeah, yes, the 60s from the 60s, 60s from the 60s.
I'm 83.
Oh, so, no, you're not. No, you're not, Noel Paul Stookey. You are not 83. I'm looking at you on the album cover.
Years. I got 23 years of experience over you guys.
I can't believe it. Well, look, the 80s are the new 50s, maybe?
Yeah, that's true. I got it's the new 60s, that's for sure.
And the 60s are the new, I'm going to do a stretch, the new 20s. Okay. but regardless,
I think that's just wishful thinking, man.
Maybe it might be. And you have a new album coming out, so tell us about that. What's it called?
It's gonna. It won't be out until November, but it's called Faz. Called Faz, F-A-Z-Z, kind of a combination of folk and jazz.
Okay, I get it. All right.
Yeah, my chords have always been kind of, I guess you'd call them color chords. I've got 3 or 4 tunes, enough actually, 12 tunes. I'm thinking of looking at some of the older tunes that I've done, like What's Her Name and the jazz. The lady says she don't like jazz. I'll tell you, it's a gas to be this age.
Jazz. All right, to be fast. Okay.
Yeah. And to still have both of my, what was it? Paul Simon saying, he's thanking God that he's got his fingers,
Yeah.
Remember that line from that song?
Yeah, I do. So you were saying this had something to do with Brubeck, some influence of.
Yeah, we were on tour. The trio was on tour with Brubeck doing college concerts.
Okay.
We were both pretty. We had a large following in colleges, both the Brubeck Quartet and ourselves. And Paul Desmond was stuck with having to introduce us on stage for the one song we were going to do together. And I don't know if it's a constant, but I think jazz musicians in general tend to hold folk music and its 4 or 5 chords barely above contempt. Because so when it came time to introduce us to the audience, to bring us up on stage, he said, we're going to bring somebody up on stage now. They're folk musicians, and I don't know the combination of these two styles. I don't know whether to call it Faz or joke, but we all kind of knew what he would want to call it.
That's great. Well, it's fusion, and fusion. It's a great thing when people can fuse different sounds and not be held to certain parameters or boundaries.
How enlightened of you.
Well, and listen, I have to throw this on you too. I had an opportunity to see Peter. I think I told you when we were speaking before at the Mariposa Folk Festival.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if this is part of your presentation, but I'm going to kind of audition here, Noel. You might want to consider, me joining you at some point if you're in the area. And it would go a little like this. Puff the magic dragon, Puff the magic dragon, lives by the sea. He was, his call and response.
That time I got to use a button.
Yeah, he got to use the button. I was debating whether or not I would toss that at you because I didn't want to be offensive, but it struck me, this is kind of a folky thing, the call and the response, right?
Well, gospel for sure.
Yeah.
I was laughing at you, Lee, not the songs.
No, you were laughing at my singing, and
sorry.
I hope, Noel, that when you do that song, which I'm sure you do in your repertoire, if you do it as call and response, you won't be daunted by my attempt at replicating that.
You over there in the wings with a baritone voice. Could you kind of hold it down, please?
Yes, please. Do you and Peter perform together on occasion?
Yeah, well, we all lament the fact that Mary passed away in 2009, and it took Peter and I a couple of years to pull it together, and in the process recognize that really the audiences that come pretty much knew Mary's part, so they sing Mary's part on a lot of the, like on Jet Plane for sure, and Peter and I just sing harmony, play guitars, and hang on for dear life.
Wow, so maybe there is a role for me, singing Mary's part. Maybe. Oh, I'm pushing it there. I think we should, at this juncture, play that final song on the album as a nice bookend to the album and to this conversation, Revolution. How would that be? Great. Okay.
That'd be super. And don't forget to log on and get your selfie into the video.
Yes.
Definitely.
I'm gonna smile at every solitary person that I meet. I'm gonna wave a total stranger, no matter where they're from. I'm gonna start a revolution. I'm gonna win it one by one. Now the secret of this movement I'm about to share with you. You just pick somebody that you don't know, that's all you have to do. You don't need no other weapon than that smile upon your face. Just say hello, you let them know. We're all part of the human race, and if you should count it, as I'm sure you will, some just believe in cynicism, just believe in still. We're gonna open all these windows, we're gonna unlock every door, we're gonna sweep out every corner, we're gonna mop up every floor till he goes a dancing in the jaw of the dragon, sleeping in the lion.
What a great bookend!
Yeah,
and really, again, a song that says so much.
And if you don't mind, what was that website again?
Yes, please tell us the website.
All right, that's www.revolution1x1. That's the number 1 and an X and a 1. So it's Revolution 1 by 1, but it's spelled REVOLUTION 1x1.org.
Okay.
And you'll hear the music right away. You'll see the video right away of all of the people who have been on it and have uploaded their photos. And then you just follow the links that are right there to go to the photo booth and have your picture taken.
I've never heard of anything
I'll include
like that.
those links in our description on the podcast too, so folks can just click on that. So that'd be
great.
Cool. That would be cool.
I mean, and again, never heard of it. You're revolutionary. Again, you're still revolutionary, Paul Stookey.
Well, now, Paul, I'm calling you the wrong name already. What's your? How do folks find you there as far as your site? Now that's a different site, right?
Yes, your own website.
That's just noelpaulstookey.com. I think even the whole album is sort of laid out on that revolution thing. You can hear pieces of it, and I think even my website is listed there as well.
It's such a wonderful thing to be singing about caring and being respectful and bringing us all together, because Lord knows we need that more than ever.
You know we need it more than ever.
It's a cliche, but we're all in this together. We are.
You got that right, bro.
Well, it's. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to have you on our podcast.
Yes, thank you,
Mr. Stookey.
I mean, thank you.
Not every day you get to talk to a legend, and you are a legend. Okay, you're just going to have to accept that we think you're a U.S. legend.
Yeah, I promise to go on creaking for a while.
Listen to you. So, Billy, why don't you take us out of here?
Yeah, big thanks to Noel Paul Stookey for being our guest today. be sure and check out the link to his site in the description of our podcast. And while you're there, also check out Lee Zimmerman's link. He's a great author. He's got a book on Amazon now available called Americana Music, Voices of Visionaries, Pioneers of an Honest Sound. Of course, please like, share, and subscribe to my Backstage Pass on your favorite platform, and we'll see you next time. Happy trails.
Happy trails to you.